Okay, so this one is going to be about new systems. So for our 40k game, we're switching to the Deathwatch RPG, and doing that kind of thing always has growing pains, especially in a situation where you're trying to adapt existing characters to a new system, because in that first iteration of these characters in the first system. In this case, we were using a hack of 5e, which I use the term hack. It was mostly just reflavoring. Some things were changed around, which I thought whoever designed it, I don't remember the guy's name, I think they did a good job. I like that hack. It does a lot of good things, but. So, an example of these types of growing pains. When I made my character for the 5e hack, the restructured ranger for that hack is called the Courser. I don't know why it needs to have that different of a name, but whatever. And the main thing it does is change Hunter's Mark or Favored Foe or Favored Prey? That's not the right word. Favored Enemy. It changes that to essentially, it emulates Hunter's Mark, but it's not concentration. It's just a self buff you can activate for a minute, and you do an extra d6 damage. You have advantage on perception checks. It's sort of emulating, like, okay, you kick on the limited use target locking systems in your armor or whatever to improve your, quote, hunting ability or your target acquisition and hit rate and all those things. That works pretty well. It might be a little too strong, but we never got to the point where it's like, okay, we got to tweak this a little bit. But in addition, that class is really tech flavored. In that, like, because one of the things that hack does is, in 40k, there's no nature magic. There is divine, but it's not magic, It's psychic warp nonsense. So they kind of split magic into two different flavors. There's warp-based, which is pretty much everything Psyker, even Imperial Saints and stuff like that. That's warp stuff. And then you've got tech stuff, which is the Mechanicum and anybody doing tech stuff, orcs, whatever. Even though orc is not going to get into it, but the Courser is kind of flavored as a tech half-caster because you get spells and stuff. So I think that generally works really well. But as a result, Ragniel, the character I'm playing, I designed him as he's a Carcharodon, he's a close-range specialist, ambusher style of fighter. I designed him as a kind of pseudo-tech marine. Like, he has Mechanicum training and all that, but the nature of it can be a little different, I think, out in the Outer Dark, because for normal Marine chapters, you send a Marine or a few Marines to Mars. Usually it's Mars, but sometimes you're not close enough to Mars to do it, so you might send it to a different craft world. Not craft world, Mechanicum world. And then they go there, they stay there for like several decades, they learn everything they need to learn, and usually they become part of the Mechanicum cult as well. I feel like that doesn't necessarily happen out in the Outer Dark because, one, for a chapter like the Carcharodons, it's much more fly-by-night style of basically everything. They just find a big Mechanicum ship or something like that. The Marines spend some time there, but they're not necessarily going to spend enough time to get indoctrinated into the cult, and they're not going to learn like absolutely everything. So really, Ragniel just mostly knows like machine maintenance. He knows a little bit of some engineering. He knows some hacking and just how to maintain things. He knows how to communicate with machine spirits and that kind of stuff. But he's not overblown, but he's not like he's not a full tech marine. He's still focused on using his claws to get in and do shit. So he's really more of a... So the Carcharodons have a position called the Harvester Prime, which is, I think, the third or fourth company master. Can't remember which. But, or company captain? The leader of a company. And this captain has extra responsibility of scavenging archaeotech, which is just finding tech that they can trade to Mechanicum for more supplies. That's how they do it out there. So I see him more in line with that. He's a scavenger. He can fix and maintain tech, but he's not on the same level as like a full tech marine. So that causes issues when you're translating to this new system, because in the core rulebook, I think there's 7 classes, maybe 6. There's Apothecary, Tactical, Assault, Librarian, Tech Marine, and Devastator. I think that's it. I think those are the only ones. And those are relatively limited. For example, there's no... Like, that doesn't hit all the main beats of, say, a more, like, something like D&D. It doesn't hit all the main class fantasies there. Like, there's no stealth-focused class, which two of the characters would have been that, probably. So, I kind of had to adapt Ragniel into... I had 2 choices. Either we could go down Tech Marine and favor all of the engineering stuff, but I didn't look over the Tech Marine super closely, but they don't have a lot of melee abilities, because that is what Ragniel is focused on. He is a dual lightning claw style, get in your face and delete everything around him style of character. So then I look at Assault. Almost 90% melee-related talents, perks, and skills. So what I ended up doing was took Raven Guard as the chapter background, which gives you some benefits. It gives you certain things. So that kind of covers like the stealth abilities. It also gives you some, like, different chapters will give you access to certain talents regardless of what class you are. And a lot of the time they'll give them to you cheaper, because that's another aspect. This is not a level-based game. It's a experience buy style game. I've heard it's called skill-based, which just means you're buying skills. You're buying things with experience. But I'm not going to get into that right now. So that chapters lets you take certain skills and talents and stuff cheaper than you could otherwise get them, and sometimes you can't get them otherwise. So went down Assault, grab all text, like everything I can get to support melee stuff, but you still, especially because we're starting at a higher, I'm not going to say level, I'm going to say rank, because we started at a higher rank, it's which your rank is determined by how much experience you spend, which practically isn't all that different than levels, effectively. It's just how much experience you have used, and therefore have a certain level of power. Again, I'm not going to get into it right now. So it's only different in the mechanics of how it works. So grabbed all the requisite melee stuff, and then grabbed tech use, a little bit of intelligence boost here and there, things related to maintenance and engineering and hacking and stuff, even though they're slightly more expensive than they otherwise would be for this character, because every Marine can access a lot of different skills, but different specialties, which is what the classes are called, will get them at reduced rates. Like, for example, I think everybody can buy the acrobatic skill, but the assault Marine can get them cheaper. Reduced. It costs 400 experience instead of 800 experience, that kind of thing. And then only certain classes can grab higher levels of certain skills, because you can buy certain skills multiple times to get boosts to them. And they're just flat boosts. So that's kind of how it works. It also, you do the same thing with experience to level up your stats, your attributes, I forget what it calls them. I think it calls them capabilities. Different classes, different specialties have different spreads. So, like, for the assault, it's melee ability, like melee weapon skill is what it's called, is really cheap. To level it up all the way, which is all 4 times, it's like 3,200 experience total. So I grab that, I grab agility, I grab perception. Like, each class has like 4 stats that they're really good at, so those are really cheap and you're encouraged to buy those. Whereas other ones, it's like, for the assault Marine, I think an intelligence boost was 800 experience for level 1, whereas weapon skill for level 1, it's simple, intermediate, trained, expert, or something. Those are the 4 ranks. So it was like, for weapon skill, simple is 200, whereas intelligence is 800. So it's way more expensive to do that. So, you're encouraged to go down different, focus your stat spreads in that way. So, but as a result, this version of Ragniel is kind of less adept at tech stuff. Maybe we could mess with some numbers, but I don't think it's that important to get the character perfectly in line with the previous version of them. So now, previously, this character didn't have a jump pack. He had Mechadendrite Tentacles, Dr. Ock style. And these were mostly to support his climbing abilities. They were to support his actual tech use, because he's got these big lightning claws that he can't type on a keyboard with. So, but something like Mechadendrite use in this system requires Mechanicum implants, which you only get as a Tech Marine, and it's its own talent that you have to buy. So, I don't know, maybe we just don't worry about that too much. I haven't given it too much thought, but maybe if he could have some tentacles and he just doesn't have the jetpack. But the assault gives an ability that lets you charge and charge into things. So I don't know exactly how we could reflavor that. I'd be fine with, essentially, he's just using his tentacles to pull himself along. Or maybe the tentacles have a little assault mode where they can do a little jetpack style thing just to support that, or just using them as momentarily enhanced movement speed or something. And instead of being able to jump and fly, he just has better climbing. Because that's something else, I forget exactly where it's written. I saw people talking about it online, that the assault can, get short bursts of flight. He can fly for a minute. So that would be useful for traversal. So maybe by giving that up, we can thread in some other capabilities, but we're definitely not to the point with this system where we can really, mess with it. We can't tinker with the system yet because we don't know exactly how it works and what everything even does. So, that's a whole thing. Changing systems is hard. Which our DM for this game, Knox, has been doing lots of work, cutting and pasting the PDFs directly into the game, so we have them right there, and they're separated by relevant sections, so you don't have to go searching through the whole document for the armory where the weapons are and the talents are and the skills are, because there's so much shit. But that's kind of all I had to say for this right now. I might talk a little bit more about weapons and stuff soon, but yeah, that's it. All I got for you today.